Hey everyone, welcome back to Noiseberry Games. In this video, I'll be taking you fairly quickly through my first 2.5 hours in the Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Erdtree. I did a similar video when Elden Ring first came out. I think I did my first 3 or so hours in the game, which I was excited to do, but I ended up missing quite a few things just from the route I ended up taking in that video because I was playing it blind. So I don't think I showed off any bosses or anything in that video. I didn't get to Margit. I just went right past Margit into Liurnia, which is not what you're supposed to do at the start of Elden Ring. But yeah, I didn't get to show off very much exciting stuff in that video. Luckily, that will not be a problem in this video. So I started by sorting through all my characters, picking which one I wanted to play through the DLC first, and I decided to start off with Cheeky, my Death's Poker build character. If you've never seen Death's Poker, enjoy this video. It might inspire you to try out the build, because it's really, really good. I used my fancy new gesture, and I spoke to Leda, who is by the Grace. She told me to touch the withered arm to enter the realm of shadow, and I gladly obliged. Once inside the DLC, I immediately left an incredibly original message, but I quickly realized that my message had actually been on the mark. What a view. I arrived at the gravesite plain and lit the first grace of the DLC. I marked what the map told me would be the first map fragment, so I had an idea where to go, and set off. Very quickly, I noticed several bloodstains close to the grace. What fools, I thought to myself, who dies to the very first enemy of the DLC? After a couple of attempts, I managed to kill the first enemy of the DLC on my third try, and then I moved on. I very quickly found that performance was absolutely dreadful in the open area. I tried changing some settings, like I dropped grass down to medium from maximum. Nothing really seemed to help. It was only in this opening big area where performance was really bad. It seems better since, and it's also better in caves and dungeons, so hopefully it's just the weird stuttering issue that Elden Ring had at launch, and it's just like the first time you run through, as it caches the shaders that makes it really bad, but yeah, it wasn't a great start. I then arrived at the Scorched Ruins after collecting the map fragment, so I could have a look around the actual map. I killed a few shadowy enemies that were essentially tougher versions of the base game hollows. Just, you know, those guys that amble around. But most of them took 2 hits from my plus 10 Death's Poker. I was able to explore the Scorched Ruins a bit and found the first new talisman of the DLC. It was called the Blade of Mercy. It was not, in fact, a weapon, it was a talisman, and it boosts attack power after each critical hit. Sounds like it'd be very good for very heavy builds, builds that, you know, constantly stagger enemies. After finishing with the ruins, it was time to head to the big fiery Wicker Man enemy. You'll probably recognize him if you saw any of the trailers. He's been in some kind of, a lot of promotional material for the DLC. This thing hit like a truck. Had an instant kill attack where he picked me up, dropped me inside his big flaming maw, his big basket. No way to get out of that. He took hardly any damage, so I figured, you know, maybe this is something I have to leave for later. Maybe I'll get something that can take him down later. So I just left him. I walked away. So I skirted past him. I found a small cave with one of those paintings that you see in the base game where it depicts an area of the game that you have to go to, and then you get a little reward. Haven't solved any of the paintings yet, but I did find 2 paintings pretty early in the DLC. I then found my first revered spirit ash. This is an item that's only in the DLC, and it's an item that permanently boosts spirits, summon spirits, and torrent when used at a grace, but it only applies to the DLC. So this is one of 2 kind of key items, upgrade items, that you use to power up your character in the DLC. But like I said, it only applies to the DLC. Once you leave it, your stats just go back to normal. By this point, I'd ended up pretty close to the very first grace of the DLC, and I found a sign that said there was a strong enemy ahead. I dispatched the enemy with ease, before realizing there was an even stronger enemy just ahead that my girlfriend dubbed Wolverine, as you can probably see why he was called Wolverine. He dropped a new type of weapon, the Beast Claw. Not something that old Cheeky's going to be using, but a cool new weapon type. After killing Wolverine, I went back to the starting Grace and I hugged the left side of the map this time. I ended up at a mausoleum, which is literally just stairs down to a fog gate and then a very small room with a boss in it. And I got to fight my first boss of the DLC. This was the Black Jail Knight. Also hit like a truck because DLC, FromSoft DLC, everything hits like a truck. But the Black Jail Knight had some attacks that I could quite easily punish with my build. One of them was he would reload his crossbow, he would shoot one like flaming bolt, and then he would shoot a volley of them. So I basically just had to kind of strafe to the side as he did the volley, and as soon as he'd finished it up, I could just start ghost flaming him to death. Killing this knight rewarded me with the Solitude set, the armor set, and his greatsword. I didn't use it right away, but I ended up equipping the Solitude gauntlets and pants on my character, just so I could use some of the new stuff, because I wasn't using a ton of new stuff. After leaving the mausoleum, I found the cute worms from the screenshots, the cute blue ones. They look very cool. Not so cute when they're attacked, kind of horrifying when they're attacked. And then found another Grace just past the big Wicker Man fella. It had a golden cross and 2 NPCs there. Love to find friendly NPCs anytime in a FromSoft game. One of them gave me a map that showed the location of a couple more golden crosses, so I had a bit of an idea of where to go next. I headed through the nearby tunnel and left another hilarious message. Hopefully you see them. Give them a like. I saw a big fort castle looking thing ahead, but decided to leave it for a little bit and go explore a little bit further for the time being. I found what looked like a small village, so I summoned Mimic Tier because, I don't know, it's just kind of fun to explore these little areas with a copy of myself. So we began exploring together. Had to fight a ton of enemies, especially at one part of the village. There's just a big group of something like 6 or 7 of them. They hit really hard, but they went down fairly easily with Mimic Tier taking aggro. And I got a big hammer from them. I think it's like a creature's arm, it said. At the end of the village, I received a new heirloom talisman. This was a very cool one that depicted an outer god, and it boosts arcane. After the village, I came across a small pond with some dogs chilling in it, so I left a very helpful message again. I then saw a pest, one of those creatures that you see in the Halig tree, and on the way to Astel, but it wasn't attacking, and it turned out to be friendly and gave me a cookbook, so that was cool, just a fun little thing. I do wonder how many people accidentally killed this pest, because, it looks like an enemy. It looks like quite a tough enemy from the base game. And then found the funniest enemy of the DLC so far, giant lightning rams, literally just scaled up versions of the lightning rams from the base game. I died to them. I think I might have died to a small lightning ram, but because I was fighting a big lightning ram, they're pretty cool. I then came across a church, which had a new talisman in it, a blue talisman that slowly regenerates FP. There's a red equivalent in the base game that slowly regenerates HP, but being able to slowly recover FP is quite good, so I've been kind of using it off and on in the DLC. If I'm exploring, I'll have it on, because then it'll just keep recovering, but if I'm going into a boss fight, I'll switch to the int boosting talisman, just because I need more damage. Near this church, I got a really good view of just how massive the DLC is, and also how vertical it is. You can see there's so much far below me, and it looks like I can get down there at some point. No idea how to yet. I then dropped down a ledge, and I saw a message that said, seems familiar. And I realized I was back at the very start of the DLC, and I found, the message I'd left earlier. So that was a really cool moment. I hadn't realized exactly where I was. Then I decided it was time for that big castle I'd seen earlier, and just up ahead, just before the start of it, I found another Grace, which had 2 more people and another one of those golden crosses. Ansbach, who was apparently counselor or something to Lord Moog before, which is very cool. He asked me to find more of the crosses. I think he said he wanted me to find 6 altogether. And the other NPC was a very nervous vendor called Moore. I headed into the castle. This looked to be like the first, or at least the first one that I found, legacy dungeon of the DLC. Had to fight a horrifying new scorpion enemy, and as if that wasn't bad enough, I then had to fight tons of little ones. Luckily, my Ghost Flame attack handled all of them easily enough, wasn't too bad. After the creepy scorpion rooms, I found my first grace, and turns out this place was called Belurat Shadow Settlement. As you'd expect, the huge door right next to the grace was closed until later, so I set off up the side path. The first enemy I encountered was a big machete-wielding shadow. Seemed very tough at first, but I quickly realized that 4 light attacks from my Death's Poker actually staggered them, so they became pretty easy after that. Just kind of dodge the first attack, smack them 4 times, and then you can riposte them. I proceeded along the main path, and 2 enemies up above me were throwing spiraling gold magic at me. Don't quite know what it is or how to cast it, but I hope I can eventually use those spells. Like the spiral gold magic looks very, very cool. Some stairs in a small pantry led to my second grace of Belurat, so I used more souls to level myself up, since I was walking around with about 60,000 at that point, and I didn't really fancy losing them, so I popped something like 100k so I could level up. A message warned me of another strong foe ahead, and I was then invaded by Fire Knight Queeline. I think that's probably how you pronounce it. He has some really cool fire spells. I'm thinking they're like mesmer fire spells that I look forward to hopefully using as Dragon Steve in the future. He dropped another new talisman. This was one that raises attack power after defeating an enemy. I crossed some rooftops, and I found another helpful message that let me know a shortcut to the first grace was close by. After unlocking the shortcut, I encountered an even bigger and creepier scorpion enemy. Luckily, he couldn't fit through the door, so I was able to cheese it fairly easily. After killing the big scorpion, I was rewarded with the bone bow, a bow made out of, you guessed it, bones, that lets you use like Rancor Call skills, like the Ghost Flame Skull skills. Sounds very cool. I then ended up in kind of a lower sewer area, and it had a bunch of fly enemies, which I'm pretty sure are like reskinned flies from the Ashes of Ariandel DLC in Dark Souls 3. I think they're called like man flies or flymans or something. Probably not flymans, but something like that. There wasn't actually anything down there, so I kept moving and eventually found my third grace of Belurat, which happened to be right outside what looked to almost certainly be a boss room. There was a summon sign for Redmane Freya. She was one of the NPCs I'd met at an earlier grace. And then it was time for the first main boss of the DLC. If you've seen any of the trailers, even the very early trailers, you'll probably recognize this enemy from those. This was the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. So for this fight, I decided not to summon Mimic Tier, because I already had Freya to help me. Thought it would just be a little bit too easy. I didn't want to breeze through everything in the DLC. I wanted to try and learn all the bosses, because I think this is my strongest character, so like anything I play after this is going to be a struggle. This boss was really, really hard. I think the worst part of it has got to be the usual FromSoft thing, the camera. The lock-on positions in such a weird place that throughout the fight, your camera, like where you're locked onto, will both be too high and too low at various times. Like when it's close to you, its attacks are coming from its head, but you're locked on to kind of like near its feet. So if it's right next to you, you're kind of like looking down at the ground when it's all up above you trying to attack. So yeah, just really, really bad camera for this fight. I don't know if it'd be easier, not locked on. I don't think it would, because it is quite fast and can move all over the place. So yeah, kind of a tough fight, made far worse from the camera. Again, this boss also hit like a truck. Any FromSoft DLC has really, really hard-hitting enemies. The Divine Beast entered Phase 2 with about 70% health left, so it didn't phase transition at about half health. Transitions very, very quickly. In Phase 2, it can use various elemental abilities like lightning and frost. I had a couple of very close attempts, but I was able to kill it, thanks to some of Freya's help for sure, on my third try. I've got no idea how people are going to solo this boss, though. I'm sure people will be able to, but it seems very, very tricky. After killing it, it dropped its mask, which looked absolutely ridiculous on me. Did not end up using that. I feel like, speaking of terrible cameras, that would not help your camera at all. I also checked Roundtable to see what its remembrance unlocked, but again, nothing useful for my character. Potentially something there if you want to try and build a kind of a roar kind of character. Potentially something. I moved on past the boss room and headed up a huge staircase to an area that was blocked by shadowy branches, very reminiscent of how the Erdtree is initially blocked off for you. I assume I have to return to this place later, probably after doing most of the rest of the DLC, and then this will be like the finale. That's just kind of my thinking so far. I went back to one of the earlier graces to thank Freya for helping me in the fight, just to see if she had any new dialogue. She told me a little bit about when she served with Radahn, very interesting lore. And then that was it for my first couple of hours. I've played more since recording this video, but I only wanted to do a quick video on the very early part of the game. I'll do a follow-up video once I've fully done the DLC, but that might not be for quite a while, because I think it's pretty large. So there you go, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you're enjoying the DLC so far. Try and keep spoilers out of the comments, you know, be very vague with boss names and stuff like that. Yeah, just try not to talk about anything too specifically, that would be great. Hope everyone's enjoying the DLC if you're playing it, and I will see you later. Bye!